Let's get into the big stories, and in the iconic words of the weird Australian thing that was Iggy Azalea, first things first. I'm so fancy. Yo, that was everywhere for a while. You know what's so wild about that song, by the way? You know what's so wild? One of the next lines is, I'm still in the murder business, which is pretty fitting considering we're going to speak now about South Africans murdering everybody. Not in the General Mkhwanazi police scandal kind of way, although that's definitely the murder business. And we will be speaking about that a little later. Wild news regarding the police scandal, but no. Now we need to talk about another weekend where South Africans murdered everybody in sport, people, because the Springboks Club Georgia this weekend, Banyana beat Senegal to make the African Cup semi-finals. The Baby Boks beat the All Blacks to win the Under-20 World Champs. Man, we are so good at sport. Imagine if we also had electricity, good roads, and a decent police. Yo, if we had all of that, even Bafana would win something, people. The Springboks this weekend went to Mbombela, and let me just say, they Mbombelaed those Georgians. They Mbombelaed them like America Mbombelas a country with oil and brown people in it, guys. Too soon? It's been like 40 years. Banyana needed penalties to beat Senegal, but their campaign to defend their African champions crown is still going, and now heads to a crunch match against old foes Nigeria. I'm sure Twitter will be totally normal about that game. And the Junior Boks won the world champs for only the second time and the first time in 13 years. And people, the team that starts that game for South Africa contained 11 players of color out of 15 starters. 11! In rugby. The Baby Boks looked more like Bafana than the Bulls for like the first time ever. And to all the racists out there, you know what I have to blame for the Baby Boks' success? Transformation. And I assume you do too, right? Because whenever a player of color makes the box, it's because of transformation, right? And for once, I kind of agree with you because I also think it's transformation's fault here, because it turns out when you take active steps to welcome and include millions of young black and brown potential players into rugby, you get way more youngsters playing rugby, which means way more talent in the system, which means way better players and way better box, right? Look at that, racists. Look at that, racists. For the first time, even we agree. Sure, not really. You think transformation is the worst and I think it's the best, but we agree that transformation created a truly South African-looking rugby team that are now world champions. As always, rugby brings us together, and I guess so does a castle or whatever they usually tell us. Okay. Just before we move on, we need to highlight one more incredible South African who dominated this weekend in the swimming pool. Didn't get as much love, but South Africans have always been very good at strokes. Whether, be polite, whether back strokes or breast strokes or other strokes. In fact, South Africans have won medals at the Swimming World Championships 23 years in a row. 23 unbroken years of getting medals for strokes. Guys, no wonder the population is going up. We are good at strokes. And now we have a new superstar stroker, because this weekend, 21-year-old University of Pretoria student Peter Kutsia won the 100-meter backstroke at the World Student Games in Germany. And people, he swam that student games race faster than the guy who won Olympic gold last year. He is a student, and this weekend he swam the 8th fastest time of all time of any human ever. That is insane. This 21-year-old kid would have won Olympic gold last year with this time and is now top seed for the World Champs happening this weekend in Singapore. People, it's time we learned strokes, swimming, because we need to watch and understand this generational stroking talent from South Africa. Peter Kutsia, remember the name. Okay, that's enough of no DNA, just RSA, although it was a beautiful weekend. Now we need to talk about the other murder business, the public policing scandal involving General Mkhwanazi's press conference 3 Sundays ago. There is now even more bombshell news, because yesterday we got news that President Ramaphosa has been sitting on 2 more reports of police failures to tackle corruption and prevent serious violence and unrest like the July 2021 riots in KwaZulu-Natal. One report recommends that the police service, crime intelligence, and national intelligence change so that it can counter significant threats, which is part of what Mzansi spoke about 3 Sundays ago. Ramaphosa got that report 3 years ago and has done nothing with it. The other report came out a year ago and recommends how law enforcement agencies can better fight corruption, which is another thing Mzansi spoke about 3 weekends ago. That report, again, that Ramaphosa got a year ago, was put together by the National Anti-Corruption Advisory Council, which I will now be calling by their acronym NACAC. Yes, I said it. NACAC, it's NACAC. And it's very fitting because that's exactly what we South Africans say whenever a politician opens their mouth. NACAC. Actually, usually the full phrase, which is NACAC, man. Also, did you just find out for the first time that we had a National Advisory Anti-Corruption what? I didn't know. It clearly hasn't got much done in the last few years, guys. You're about to find out. In fact, if they said to me that they have caused any change, I would say, NACAC. But interestingly, the chair of NACAC is Feroz Kachalia, our new interim police minister from August. So maybe NACAC's work will become not they're definitely going to bleep that, if Kachalia can implement some of his council's recommendations. But the real story here is, obviously, that Ramaphosa has had these 2 reports and done nothing with them for years, which adds to previous reports from previous police commissions like the Marikana Commission, the Khayelitsha Commission, that Zuma and Ramaphosa did nothing with. It's completely outrageous. So much of what Mzansi said has already been said for years. That's probably why Ramaphosa, for the first time ever last week in that press conference, didn't say he was shocked or surprised. Ever. He always says he's shocked and surprised. Hello, he already knew. And yet the president hasn't touched these reports. He says that his administration has taken serious steps to reform the police service. And to that I say, nah. He's lucky he can't run for president again at this point, because it's hard to believe many people will vote for him again, knowing what we now are learning about his presidency. Okay. One party that some people are actually voting for is the MK party, even though they're a hotter mess than dog shit in the Sahara. That's even more knock for you people. That's a callback. Every week, they manage to do a whole new silly thing that they haven't done before. And you know, I have to respect them for that. Game recognizes game. They always have new material every single week. Such good content. Now, I could tell you about how Jacob Zuma went to Morocco in the last few days, stood in front of a South African flag, even though he is not the president anymore. I don't know if anyone's told him of that. And told the Moroccans that he recognizes Morocco's claim over Western Sahara. Now, if you don't know, it's a territory which has been trying to gain independence for years, and the ANC has supported it, which means South Africa has supported it, in trying to gain independence. So Zuma rocked up, pretended to be the president, contradicted official South African foreign policy. We could talk about that, but I want to tell you about something truly crazy that didn't get much attention last week, and it should have, because people, yo. I think we need to invent a yo scale in South Africa, kind of like the Richter scale that measures earthquakes, but it's a yo scale for news. And this is at least 5 on the your scale. It's at least yo. But you can decide for yourself how many yours you will give this. Okay. MK in KwaZulu-Natal's local government was voting on the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill, known for short as DORA. But this is no Dora the Explorer story. It's more a Dora the Exposer. Here's what happened. Most of the MK representatives voted for DORA, but 6 MK members, or 5 rather, voted against it, which is already 1 yaw on the yaw scale. A party that can't get all of its people to vote as one is already a mess. One of the MK people who voted against DORA is Mervyn Dirks, their former chief whip. Dirks has been mad ever since he was fired as chief whip, and he even once claimed that he got no notification from the party that he'd been fired as chief whip of the party. That's your 2 on my scale. And he is clearly still beefing with the new chief whip and the whole party, because in this meeting he said, quote, "The MKP will not be a part of the shenanigans of the government of provincial unity or the government of national unity. We won't support the bill. We reject it with the contempt it deserves." He was speaking like he was still chief whip, right? And then only 4 MK members voted with him and the rest voted the other way. But now you're thinking, Dan, you said this was a Dora the Exposer story. Where's the exposing? What's going on? Well, the meeting was being held virtually on Zoom. And at one point, an MK MP named BC Khoza, quote, appeared naked in the house, because it was the house. It was online, but it was the houses of the legislature. It seemed as though he was wearing MK Party merch, which isn't allowed in the house, even though it was a virtual meeting, and it was still a meeting of the legislature, so it was still the house. And then according to the Speaker of the House, Nontembeko Boyce, he, quote, was in contempt of the rules, in full party regalia, and at some point, he was naked in the house. I would not have seen it had he not shown himself. I want to thank his party for the honesty it instilled in him so he could be on video with MK insignia. Just how naked was MP Khoza? Did he just take off his shirt? I don't know what you think about this, but for me, full party regalia means full party regalia. You know what I mean? You're on the your scale. MK Party, hotter mess than a dog in the Sahara. Okay,